All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the July edition of the Nautilus Notes. I see folks are still joining in. We've got a lot of folks here today. This is fantastic. And we'll get started in just a second here. It is 2:03. All right. All right, so once again, welcome to the July edition of Nautilus Notes. I've gone with a confusing numbering system, 19.2. This is 2019, and the second one, I don't know if that's the best way. We can always change it every month for a very coherent way of organizing things. But no, thanks for joining us. If this is your first time joining the Nautilus Notes, what is it? It's a knowledge sharing session. We know that throughout the week, everyone who's working with Squid comes across unique problems, unique challenges, hurdles. You might find a really great combo of features. Maybe you found a really great library to extend Squid with. Well, we don't want that knowledge to stay locked up in people's heads. And so the Nautilus Notes is a chance for us to share that with each other and all get better together. We started out doing this internally, and now we want to open it up to the broader Squid technical community. The format is kind of weird. We've got both a document and the video and then the recording that comes out. And I will say we really do want to publish this. We're still figuring out the best way to do that. So we haven't forgotten. We still have not published the notes from last month. That is coming as well as this month. We're going to find a good way to do that. To put it out there so that it's easily searchable, it's usable by the Squid technical community. In the meantime, we are posting these on the Squid YouTube channel once the recording is done. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and jump in. If you're not watching, you should. I am sharing our screen here. We'll be working through this document. If you have questions as we go, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom. There is also a chat where you can go, and it can be the Wild West, and you can say all kinds of things. But the Q&A is a good place to go ask questions, and we have Squid folks that are in there monitoring that, and we'll try to answer those questions as we go. Carl did a great job giving an example of a question. Hi, Carl.
Hey, everybody. It's Carl. We're here. With the time turkey.
With the time turkey. We did get some feedback that the time turkey was a little oppressive last time. So we'll be very sparing with our use of the time turkey this time around. All right. So my name is Matt Brown. I'm a solutions architect here at Squid, and I will be your host for today. So let's talk about what's going on right now. First thing, last week we launched our first edition of the New to Squid webinar. That's something that we're going to do every Wednesday. And I'll go ahead and put this link in the chat. If you have folks on your team that you want to get into Squid, you want them to jump in, start to use it, please have them go and register for the New to Squid webinar. Basically, it's 30 minutes. And it's me, Zach McElrath, and Josh Cutler, and we take 30 minutes and go through some of the basics of getting started with Squid, installing it, building some basic Squid pages, and then it's also open to do some Q&A as well. It is intended to kind of be your first time getting into Squid. So if you're like a Mansoor and you come to New to Squid, we will be mad at you. It is not for you. You are an advanced Squid builder, and we will not answer your questions.
No
trolls.
Yeah.
That's what Nautilus Notes is. Well, no trolls in Nautilus Notes either, but this is the deep end of the pool, and we're going to continue to work to try and do webinars and content for everything in between the shallow and deep end. So please go check out New to Squid. And then we talked about this last time, but Squid basics are up on the YouTube. They're intended to take you from 0 to 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, I would say 30. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
maybe skateboarding.
Yeah, yeah. So Carl is a product manager for Squid Basics, and I know that you want to do more videos coming soon. What are you wanting to do coming up here in the next couple
we
weeks?
got some good ideas for videos. the main thing, the number one thing is maybe fill in some gaps. So we know that the Squid Basics videos that are on YouTube now are not all the basics. So we'll be working on filling in some gaps, maybe even finishing out some, replacing some that maybe could be a little bit higher quality, whatever. Also, we're going to do kind of like same stuff, different version, but we're going to highlight Squid V2 pages. Same basic things, so no need to worry about a lot of advanced stuff there, but we're going to highlight the awesomeness that is Squid V2 pages. And then there's another idea that's in the works. I'm pretty excited about it. We have, I'm sure a lot of people know, we have some really good demos available to the public. And then there are some that we just have internal, which is a lot of fun. But we're going to identify some of those and maybe try to do a series where we reverse engineer a video to really get that in. And that's the time turkey.
Is that the digital time turkey?
Yes. And so I just got turkey to myself.
All right.
So,
Awesome.
I'll be quiet now.
Cool. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, we're excited to see that.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tune in to the community announcements.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're really trying to use that as one of our main communication mediums. And if you want, go ahead and post something on community for something that one of the gaps that we might need to fill in for Squid Basics, but we will take your feedback and make it actionable.
Cool. Thanks, Carl. All right, last thing. On the Squid website, we have a calendar of what's coming up, and it's mostly virtual events here in the summer. But in August, we've got a team that's going to be at the Gartner Catalyst Conference. So if you're at that, or in October, there's a Dynamics User Group Summit and a couple other events coming. So if you're at any of those, please come by the Squid booth, get a Squid hat, Squid swag. We want to deck you out. All right, first poll of the day. I'm going to go ahead and launch this. What we want to know is what is the #1 reason that you would recommend Squid to a colleague? So someone else, another dev, another builder, what's the thing that you're going to say is going to be really, really helpful to them in their job? So please help us with that. We know that there's a lot that is really cool about Squid. Yeah, there's always wanting to get more good information, more good. Mm-hmm. All right. Quote of the month is one of my favorites from Mark Twain, and I think it really encapsulates the spirit of the Nautilus Notes. A man who carries a cat by the tail learns something that he can learn in no other way. So we know that there are a lot of hard-learned lessons out there, and we are gonna try and beat Mark Twain at his own game. And maybe it is possible that maybe you can learn some lessons in a less hard way. So that's what we're trying to do here. All right. So our first column, so to speak, recurring segment that we do is the contributor's choice. And, woo! Yeah, that was Carl. Thank you. And the goal of this is to highlight a feature of Squid that maybe you never got to because you went super deep in areas A, B, and C, never got to D, or maybe you forgot about it. There are components, elements of Squid that are really useful that, you know, I was in a very particular type of project and forgot that that was there. This is one of those that I want to make everyone aware of because it's really, really cool. It's really helpful, and it unlocks a lot of Squid's power. So a lot of the power of Squid comes from being able to connect to whatever data that you need in a single page. And so in the Salesforce world, you have data that's split out across a bunch of different objects. In other relational databases, it's different tables or entities. And so with Squid, you can have as many models as you need to go get as many levels of information across different objects. Maybe it's the same object. And so that's really great. When it comes to navigating hierarchies of information, that's a pretty common challenge. Whether it's account hierarchies, whether it's, you know, an account has contacts, which has activities, how do I get all the way down to that level in a single page? So drill downs, but then also things like grouped tables. Those are pretty common use cases. And Squid has a feature, a property that pops up from time to time that it's a little sneaky because it's not always there, and it only shows up sometimes, and that is context. So here's what I mean. So if we look at a Squid page, in this case, I've got a queue, and I am wanting to navigate the Nautilus Corp account family. How do we get down through there? So I'm going to start at that top level, and I'm opening what's called a drawer. And inside that drawer, I have another queue, queues within queues. Okay, and so we can see here, I can navigate down at each of these levels. So how are we doing that? If we look behind the scenes in the Squid Composer, I'm using a queue component with an action. Sorry, let me just move around all these little pop-up things. I feel like I'm in early 2000s internet here. So when we click on a row, it's going to do a couple of different things. It's going to go get that next level of information, and it's going to open a drawer. And inside that drawer, I've got a queue. Now, when you drag a component into a drawer or a pop-up that's coming from a drill down action, and then the other place that this will happen will be in a deck card, you're going to get another tab of properties that doesn't always show, and that's the context property. So you can see here, when we add that queue up in the top right, we've got lists, filters, item display, interactions, display logic. That's all normal. But over on the right here, we now have a context tab where I could add a context condition. So a lot of different types of conditions in Squid. You got model conditions, you have conditional rendering. Context conditions are like conditional rendering, only we aren't really showing or hiding stuff. We're just showing stuff in the right context. And so here we're saying in this drawer, show me accounts where parent ID equals the ID of the row that I started in. So that's going to be how we do things like drawers. Let's see here.
So Matt,
yeah, go ahead.
Context is kind of like Quentin Tarantino doing like a cameo appearance in his films.
It's just like layers and layers.
You just never know when he's going to show up, really?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
All right.
I think there's probably, you could probably go with Inception as another good metaphor. Yeah.
It's a little more predictable than
more predictable.
It's more context, more predictable than Quentin Tarantino.
It's really wherever.
Take that all the way to the bank.
I would say it is a way of limiting what data is in a component further than what is fed in from the model. So, but by default, like components or, for instance, like a series in a chart is going to be bound to a specific model and be showing all the data in the model.
Mm-hmm.
Context conditions are a way of saying, no, I don't want all the data in the model, just some of it.
It's how do I arrange it visually in the page?
Yeah.
Arnpair asked a good question here. He says, context rocks. Any chance that in operator will be available in the composer rather than just the XML? Asking for a friend. Oh, fun.
Looks like Clark wants to answer that.
No comment. Clark, do you got something there?
I think maybe Clark was
first
one to click on it.
No, that's a great question. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. We'll go ahead and follow it up. But
that's a great idea.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
There's also more depth to context that we won't talk about here. There's other context is just one type of, I guess, component data condition type that you can have. You can also add more types of conditions on components to say, I just want this subset of data to be displayed. Mm-hmm. Context is one type of condition you can apply. So there's also deeper layers there, and it'd be great to have that appear in not just in XML in the future.
So there are XML secrets.
There are more secrets.
Oh
there.
Man, okay.
Okay, you guys, I'm not going to squeeze the time turkey.
Okay, but we're up against it.
We're about 7 minutes in.
So last thing here, this is an example of a deck with context. So a deck with context is like having a bunch of drawers that you don't have to open. They're open automatically. And so I'm using the same account structure here with decks inside of decks inside of decks. That's where we can get the Inception metaphor. Yeah. And we'll go one level deeper. This is something that is only possible with V2. I was geeking out about this past week. With V2, models are now namespaced inside page includes.
Woo!
Exactly. It's a pocket dimension, which is not going to be affected by anything outside of it. This is a page that is inside itself. And so using a page with hierarchies, we can include that page inside itself, and it's not going to break the world zero because it's spaced. All right, I think it just had an audio hiccup. Am I coming through okay? All right, good. Just don't touch anything. All right, awesome. Okay, cool. So context, very, very cool. If you're ever having to navigate complex hierarchies of information, context is going to be your secret weapon. All right, cool. We're now going to shift to, oh, sorry, we got a question. Is namespace in the current or future version of Squid? Namespace is in Squid V2 right now. So
V2 pages.
V2
so
pages.
V2 pages have a different runtime, and they are that runtime fully sandboxes or namespaces all of the Squid API. So models and components, any IDs that a component has, or a action sequence or a model. Snippets, they're everything that is registered with the Squid API is all sandboxed to that page runtime API. So you can get it, and there's a whole lot of new stuff with V2 there, but suffice to say, yeah, everything that you build in a page in V2 pages is only in that page. It doesn't leak out. It can't get out of its box.
Cool. Yeah, that's really, really exciting, and I think will solve a lot of headaches for folks. So awesome. Well, let's go ahead and shift gears. Every Nautilus Notes, we want to highlight one of our champions out there in the Squid community. Last time we had Mansoor Chadi from Sassly come and show a really cool thing he did with e-signatures. This time I wanted to hear from a longtime Squid champion, Chandras, who has been active on the Squid community for a really long time. And this is a little bit more on the professional development side when it comes to Squid career, because she's been working with Squid for quite a while now, and I wanted to get some perspective on what that's been like. So Chandra, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to be here.
Chandra, I think, are you on mute? Can we hear you yet?
I am not on mute.
I maybe have to unmute you.
Yeah, I can.
It's good.
She's coming through.
Is your volume all the way down, Matt?
Is my volume all the way down? Try it again.
Can you hear me now?
Let's just assume that it wasn't my volume being all the way down and another really, really complicated technical problem.
I think the rest of the community, the rest of the webinar can actually hear.
Great. Oh, great. Oh, perfect. Excellent. Well, Chandra, thank you so much for joining us. So you're currently at Rose Tree, is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
Cool. Tell us a little bit about Rose Tree. What's it like working with the team there?
It's been really great. Started there earlier this year, really gotten some opportunities to do what I really love, which is develop solutions, be it in both Salesforce and Squid, but now getting to do it across a lot of different market verticals and different size companies, and getting to engage with clients on a lot of different types of problems and problem solving. So it's been really exciting.
Cool. Now, before you were at Rose Tree, where were you?
I was at a company named AFL, about a $2 billion global company who was a manufacturer of fiber optic cable and components. That company is made up of lots of different business units, grew through acquisitions. So in my role within our kind of systems group, bringing a lot of that data together using Salesforce and then eventually Squid was really one of the biggest challenges that I had there.
Cool. So I was talking to you before, you were at AFL for a while and you didn't necessarily start out in the technical space. What was that journey like?
No, not at all. I actually started at AFL as an intern when I was still in college. Wow. And I was there for 19 years, which means I started there when I was 4 years old. Wow. And my first 13 years at AFL were in applications and sales engineering. Then I went into product line management. Then I was a supply chain manager back in operations in the manufacturing area. And it was in that role that I got kind of pulled out to say, hey, we have a problem with our pricing and quoting. And it's in everybody's heads, and it's in Excel spreadsheets and Access databases. And we need to centralize this into something that's scalable. So that journey kind of led me into the CPQ world. And we started with a CPQ, cloud-based CPQ system. We actually were using big machines. And then that led us to implement Salesforce right after that. So that's how I got my start into kind of the tech world.
So, and I think you said you guys jumped into Salesforce and got some training. What was that like to adopt Salesforce as a company? And it sounded like you kept going deeper. Is that right?
Yeah, AFL actually had an attempt at Salesforce implementation. Oh gosh, it was probably about 6 years prior to our actual implementation in 2013. We did the 5-day instructor-led training. That's how we learned it. This was before Trailhead, limited resources really in how to learn Salesforce at the time. So we did our implementation, and after that I decided to go for the admin cert about 6 months into administering the instance. And it was just a couple months after that, I was trying to solve this very specific business problem that the users were complaining about. They wanted a loss reason for opportunities. And they didn't ask for this, but it just bothered me. I did not want that loss reason to show up on their page unless the opportunity was lost. And I didn't want them to hit save on the opportunity when they did lose it, and it to say, oh, you forgot to update the loss reason. I wanted them to know that ahead of time. So that was my very, very simple use case. And I went to the interwebs and started Googling and came across somebody saying, hey, you can do conditional rendering of a field using this tool called Skuid.
Awesome. Yeah, and I remember that. I think you guys were one of the last customers that I sold to before joining the dark side on the solution.
Yes, you gave me the demo, and the rest was history after that.
Yeah, that's great. And I also want to point out too, what you're trying to do is there's a really great resource out there that's like the 10 commandments of interaction design. And the number one is, well, actually it's not number one, it's in there, but it's recognition rather than recall. That idea of showing the user something before they need it so that they aren't blindsided, so that they can see it without having to remember it. So that's really cool. That's great to hear that. And conditional rendering continues to be a really useful part of Squid for sure. So what was it like for you to learn Squid? Did you feel like you were thrown into the deep end of the pool? Yeah, tell us that story.
I'm kind of a hands-on learner, so I like to be presented with a problem or a use case and just kind of, everybody get out of my way. I'm just going to roll up my sleeves and try and attempt this. And if I get stuck, I'll start digging for solutions. But instead of being trained or taught, I prefer to just do it. So that's really how I learned, was kind of dissecting some existing pages that were kind of provided as some examples, some really, really old ones, because this was back right when the action framework was coming out. So many of the actions on the buttons were JavaScript code instead of the action framework.
So hold on. So these were the buttons on the Squid sample pages, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so as an exercise to learn the actions framework, you went and converted those from code to actions framework buttons.
Right. So the opportunity detail page example had a table of tasks open and a table of tasks completed. And the little green checkbox to complete the task ran a snippet. And all it was doing was updating the status and requerying the models to make it go from the open task down to the completed tasks. So finally figured out, like, hey, this can be done declaratively. I can unravel all this JavaScript, take this out, and put in the action framework instead. So that was actually a really good learning exercise.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. And that reminds me, man, how do I get to I just had the poll results up. Where did they go? Why did I lose my...
Maybe co-host can find it.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Oh, you've got it right there. But good. It's it's 3. Okay, cool. Yeah. So Actions Framework wins. Yay! As the number one reason why you'd recommend Squid to a colleague. So always great to hear those stories. So you got into Squid, you got into the community, and then was it being a part of the community that you connected with the folks at Roastery?
Yeah, partially. So a lot of the names I recognized through just kind of the relationships that we had with Squid over at AFL and through our Salesforce contacts, and just recognized a lot of the names of the Roastery folks, Craig, Conlon, Nosa, Tim, these guys. I learned something new from them every day. So they've been really great and taught me a lot.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So, okay, a couple more things. What are some things that you're hoping to see from Squid in the next year here?
One of the things when, my way that I like to learn was to roll up my sleeves and dig in, be presented with a problem and just give me the application, let me try it. I get that there's documents and user manuals and training out there, but I'm one of those guilty ones who tends to go to that as the last resort. But not everybody learns that way. And when we were trying to grow the group at AFL, me being the primary Squid developer, I wanted to grow the group so we could scale. And trying to teach new people was one of our challenges. So not only was it a challenge to teach them how to use the tool, but it was also a challenge to teach them to how to use it well.
Yeah.
But just because you can build a page doesn't mean it's going to function the way the users need it to or have a good experience with it. So we did invest also in some user experience workshops and really learned a lot from that. So on my wish list items, which has been since fulfilled, very much on the way, is a training program similar to Trailhead that Squid can provide. So I'm excited to see that grow. Bring back the certifications and things like that. We all love those little badges.
Woo-hoo! We hear that, and that is absolutely what the use team. And again, I'll never get tired of it. Use guys is what we are referred to as around here. That is what the use guys are passionate about, and we are absolutely going to be focusing on that. So that is great to hear. All right, so the last thing I wanted to do was do a quick roundup of some of your contributions to the community.
Are those the only wish list items I get?
Oh, no, please lay it on.
Wait, how much time do we have? I haven't heard that turkey thing yet.
Oh, yeah, you get more turkey. Yeah.
All right, couple more, because I could probably go for a while, but I'd say a wish list item for me has been email composing and email templates. So I had many use cases where we wanted to send an email mainly to our customers that was both a record and maybe a list of children underneath it, an order and order lines, a quote and quote lines. We wanted that in the email. We had to resort to a Visualforce template to bring two objects together into a single email. So I'd love a Squid-based email template as well as a slick user interface as a composer.
Cool. And then I think you got another one, right?
I do, and it ties into one of the community highlights, and that's document generation.
All right.
So document generation, to create that PDF, I want to store it in Salesforce, and I want it to be fast and easy. Just give me that easy button to generate the document. So either native Squid, but where I can build a Squid page, and again, that allows me to bring together all the data and the models and present it in a way that works for me and my business. So either support that through a third-party partnership or natively in Squid would be awesome.
Cool. No, that's great, and that's very relevant. Our red flag that we're going to talk about today is print. So that really ties into something that we regularly get asked for on the solutions team. So let me transition from that and actually pull that community post up, because this is a great example of, you called it a community rally, Chandra, and it really is. I mean, there are so many names on here that I've seen over the years, and it's a great example of people working together to find a solution. And I want to give a shout out. There's a technology on here that ended up kind of rising to the top called DocRaptor that you guys, I think, ended up using. You want to talk a little bit about what went into that and what was good about it?
What was nice is DocRaptor took some HTML and it would send you back a document. So in our case, we wanted a PDF, and we were actually able to send it to parameters to lock the PDF or send it in a portrait versus landscape. Like, it was very flexible in how you sent it, as long as you sent HTML to it. So we were able to generate the HTML and send it through the snippet that's in this thread. And what it did is it was fast. It was very fast. And that was kind of our problem with some of the available third-party kind of App Exchange document generation tools that were out there. It just wasn't fast enough. Our users were creating, we had about 30 inside sales users, and they were generating about 1,500 quotes a month. And the customers that were receiving these quotes were on the phone tapping their fingers, waiting for that email to show up. So speed was very, very important. Of course, at the end, this is an Apex class here that I shared back with the community, where when DocRaptor is finished generating the PDF, the Apex class listens for it, picks it up, and attaches it to our record as a file.
Very cool. And it is, I want to note, James from DocRaptor actually joined the thread and was providing some support to the team. So pretty cool. And always love hearing about other technologies like that, because we know that, Squid does a lot of things really well, but it doesn't do everything. There are a lot of things out there that do other tasks that you're going to need to use. So cool. I wanted to point out two other things. There was a really great post. This was a good example of something from a long time ago that ended up coming back around. You had posted something 4 years ago about how do you clear the search component, the text that's in there. And about a year ago, someone came and realized that the new search model action in the actions framework lets you plug in a blank value into that search. And so I always love it when that happens. I'm sorry it took 3 years to find us a non-code solution there, but that I do love to see it come back around like that. Last thing I want to point out, this is an ongoing conversation. I think John Dahlberg's on the call today. Asking some good questions. Yes, John, thank you. John is doing a lot in V2. And I know that there are a number of other folks out there that are really putting V2 through its paces. There's a lot that's cool, but there's also a lot that we are growing and changing functionality in and fixing bugs here and there. So this is one of those. Right now, HTML and V2 is only, you can only put it inside the text component. You don't have it in template fields, which you can add to a table or a field editor. So this is an ongoing conversation. We are talking about it with the product team to try and figure out how to do this best. So we are hearing you. We're talking about it. We're trying to figure out how to help you with that. But I do want to take this moment. We do have one last poll. Do you have polls up there? So Josh here is going to launch this. Yeah, we'll allow panel. Yep, that's good. So what we want to know is, what's the #1 reason that you add HTML to a Squid page? There's a number of different things that are really helpful with that, but this will help us when we talk to our product team. And again, we want to keep hearing from you about using the Squid product and what's important. All right, so Chandra, any final words for us? What would you recommend for someone who's digging into Squid as they continue to build their career?
Yeah, my recommendation is just try it. We kind of moved away from on paper proofs of concepts and wireframes and things like that. Sorry, Jeff, but when you can build so quickly in Squid, to me, it's just get in there, take that business case, take that problem, and just give it a shot. When you get stuck, come to the community. You'll get some help there. Look in the documentation. It's probably there, but if you can't find it, post to the community. Somebody will jump in and help you.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chandra. That was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Give her a hand. Yep. Always great to hear from champions in the Squid community. And I do want to point out a couple things on the Squid website. There's some pretty great case studies about the use case at AFL. So please go check those out to see what they were doing. And then a little bit about Roastree. Roastree Solutions has deep experience implementing Salesforce and Squid. They work with clients of all sizes, and they do short and long-term organizational goals and objectives, leading digital transformation journeys. And this includes folks that are evaluating Squid and Salesforce for the first time. So if you're diving in, they are great people that are going to work alongside you. They've got a lot of Squid specialists on their team, Squid veterans from over the years, and we love working with them. So please check out Rose
really
Tree.
fun.
Yeah, they're fun to work with. Yeah. So Mansoor at Sassly, he's just yeah. No, actually, he's great too.
Yeah.
No sarcasm. We really enjoy working with our partners, and so it's always great to hear about what Rose Tree is doing. So thank you, Chandra. All right, let's go ahead and keep diving in. So each month on Nautilus Notes, we want to share some lessons that are learned by Squid SEs, and what these two that we're actually going to talk about are related to REST models. And so if you're used to working in Squid, you know you can connect to Salesforce, you can connect to SQL, and you can also connect to REST endpoints. And they work a little bit differently from what you might be used to. And so if you go create a REST model, creating a condition on that REST model is not the same as creating a condition on a Salesforce model, which is, you just create, you're constructing a query. With a REST model, you're really dependent on what is in the URL that you're using to go get that REST data. At least you were. In V2, there's a new feature that Clark was digging into that allows you to do another type of condition on REST models. Clark, you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Yep, sounds great. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing and you can share.
Alrighty. Let me find my page here. So essentially, I was trying to help one of our internal resources at Squid. He was building a page pointing to an API that they had actually built internally for some of our DevOps work. And he was looking to do some filtering. Let me move this little window here. And so what I've done is I've recreated a page pointing at the Squid users REST model, I guess, or REST API that we have internally, just to demonstrate some of this. But, sometimes you don't have the freedom to manipulate an API, or you don't have the time, or you just have one little ask and it's not worth spending a lot of time doing that reconstruction or adding to an API. So you want to do some basic client-side filtering. In V1, you are not able to do, as far as I know, a client-side filter or client-side condition on a REST model. However, we have found in V2, I found this new little feature that does allow for you to go ahead and select a condition type. So, like I said, this is just looking at the user's API and Squid on a model. And just to demonstrate here, I'm going to look up, find myself. There it is, on a client-side filter on this model. So let's jump over to the back end. And I do not claim to be an API expert at all. I don't have the pleasure of working with REST models very often. So I really did just use the Squid user object here on our API to set this up. But what I want to point out is that in V2 with conditions, you have this new type option here at the top, where you can select either the URL parameter, which is kind of the classic REST model condition, or a field type. So here in this example, I'm just using our last name field, and it's filterable default off, and I've built a little select option filter here on my table. And in this case, I did set up just a manually sourced pick list, just because I wanted to just put a few people on here. But just like you can with any other filter, you could choose rows in a model, condition field pick list options, or you could source it with a snippet. But it's just a really powerful way to quickly be able to client-side filter, especially on REST models where we haven't been able to do that historically.
Yeah, there's so much data out there that's in REST. It's one of the best ways, I think, to go play around with Squid platform, with data sources, is just to go connect to a lot of the publicly available REST APIs. But the challenge is you have to know how to navigate the documentation. You have to know how to set up that URL, and you can't previously you wouldn't be able to add a condition to a model unless you configured everything in the URL. And so this makes it a little bit easier to just go get a batch of data from a REST API into a Squid page, and then you can use the client-side filtering to be able to narrow it down and get to another data set, whatever you need to narrow down to. So very cool. All right, Turkey. Clark, thank you so much. That is awesome. And I'm going to transition us into the next lesson learned, which is also related to a REST API. Regularly, we have to do prototypes or POCs. We want to show the power of Squid. If you are in any kind of consulting, you might have to do the same thing. How can you quickly put in a list component, show some data, show someone what an app might look like? And so when it comes to getting that sample data, Rob Hatch has found a pretty good solution with Maca Root. Can you talk about Maca Root?
Yeah, sure. So we always love showing off third-party stuff. Friends around the interwebs come up with great stuff, and Maca Root is a super, super cool tool. So I just want to talk a little bit about what it is and how you can use it in Squid. So yeah, go check out macaroot.com. It's super easy to define a schema, and then the classic use of it is to download 10,000 rows of data in an XML in a CSV and load it up into your database. I mean, that's really why it came about. But they also will let you, instead of downloading data, they will let you make that into a REST endpoint, and then they will deliver that as a JSON file that you can consume in Squid. The cool thing about Maca Root is that they have like 140 different data types and counting. They're always adding more data types. There's some really nice referential integrity across those data types. So if you're having an address table and you say that the city is Chattanooga, it won't put the state as Georgia. If you're Susie, the gender won't be a male. And so if you can see Matt's screen, you can see kind of the different areas of referential integrity. City-state will correlate with latitude and longitude. So if you want to geocode stuff, they'll geocode it.
Awesome.
If you're doing claims data, their ICD-9 codes correlate. So if we're being really morbid and doing, mortality analysis, the ICD-9 codes will work together. MIME types and field names will work together, et cetera, et cetera.
Mortality analysis on my jokes.
So in the document and I don't know how we'll distribute this, but we definitely should distribute this. I've got like 6 or 7 publicly available schemas here. And Matt, maybe you can stop sharing and I can pick it up.
Yeah.
If I can figure out, okay, so. Again, oh yes, I have to get all my windows out of the way. So I've got a bunch of schemas that I've created, and all of these are public. So if you, so the links to these are in the document. Here's a schema that just has a whole series of information about a company. So the name, the owner, the website, number of employees, yada, 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 all this stuff that would be really great, like typical CRM data. So that works really well. So contacts, calendar entries, a whole bunch of different stuff, different kinds of schemas that you can do. And so as I said, you can preview that data just on the regular Maca Root page. Let's preview what this looks like. Okay, here's all our company data. It previews like that. Or we can turn it into an API. So I've created APIs for contacts, for claims. I created a measures table because I was doing some dashboarding. So like a general measures, just like random measures, created a measures table. So these can be retrieved in JSON via REST API and loaded to the Squid page.
Very cool.
So to do that, you're going to have to sign up with Maca Root. When you sign up with Maca Root, they give you an API key. Apparently, free plans give you 1,000 calls a day. There's some conversation about like free plans not being as performant as paid plans, but I've never had a problem with the work I've done.
For a POC or
So
for a
POC,
mockup, it should be
whatever.
fun. And to test out REST models.
Yeah.
If you're wanting
If
to,
you just wanted to play with REST,
play with
it's
REST,
a great way to do it.
Mhm.
You have to be in your account to take one of the schemas that what we'll provide for you and make an API out of it. If you just use my API with your API key, it doesn't work. So there's a little bit of wonkiness with that. But anyway, so then in Squid, what do? You set up a Maca Root data source. And in that data source, you include your API key. Don't look at my API key. Look at that boy. So API.macaroot.com.
I'll screen it out when we
No,
do the recording.
whatever. And then you create your model. All you need to do is just use the name of your API. So over here, we were in Maca Root. We go to our APIs. We had contact.json. We get, that's all we have to do in our model. Get out of the way. I'm sorry, I've got this.
It's really funny when we see the screen. It looks like you're fighing with someone.
I'm
invisible.
fighting with someone. Yes, I'm fighting with the little share screen.
Yeah.
So that's the model definition, and we pull in all the fields that were available on the that were in our schema.
So if we use that with Clark's client-side filtering on
Absolutely.
V2,
Absolutely.
that's a really, really quick
This happens
way to get up and running.
This happens to be V1 page, but whatever.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, this was a long time ago. So there's my dashboard with measures and charts and nice stuff. Here's list of contacts. And this is all just dummy data. And I was messing with calendars and I wanted a calendar. So okay, here's a bunch of calendar entries and what those calendar companies are. So it's really cool stuff. And I think I've just scratched the surface here. The API docs for Maca Root talk about constructing a schema on the fly. So I think there's some really interesting things you can do there. That it looks like you can include like conditional things, like a formula can reference other data. That you can import lists and use that to create like reference fields. They support regex, so if there's other kinds of data types that aren't part of their default data types, but you can write regex to construct those data types. Looks like you can do that. And though you can't really do write, because this is just mock data, there's no database here, there's nothing to save back to. In your Squid page, you can have your models like accept quasi-write functions. You can update this data in your Squid page. You're not gonna save it back to the database, but you can think about and work through the processes that you would do to update data in your Squid page.
Cool.
So
That's awesome.
so what we'll make available this little silly page that I made and those APIs, those schemas, so that people can take care of it.
How are we going to make that available?
Jared will have to ask that.
Yeah, that's a great question for Jer.
That sounds like a wonderful segue.
Yeah, yes, you sir, there in the front. Yeah, so we want to talk a little bit about Squid Labs. I think we mentioned this last time, but since the June Nautilus Notes and today, Squid Labs is now public.
Woo!
Yeah,
We need to get only wooer here. You guys really need.
we need to get like a train whistle or like a soundboard type thing, like Prairie Home Companion style or something. All right, so Jer, what is Squid Labs?
Yeah, so Squid Labs is a GitHub repository that is open source, available for anyone to go and browse, use code examples out of, and contribute to. And it is maintained by us, but anyone can create a branch and a pull request and submit their own kind of their own experiments, their own findings, kind of an extension of the community.
Yeah, and let me jump in and say if hopefully everyone's been in Squid for a while, but if you're just watching this, Squid is extensible, so you can add JavaScript to a Squid page in a number of different ways. And we count on Squid users being technical and being able to dive deep into that. And so what we want to do is help make that easier, help make it easy to share those kinds of things because we know there's a lot of cool things out there on the community. So that's the hope here. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it does come with a few kind of prerequisites. Obviously, you're going to know how to use Git version control and how to create branches and commit to.
Now that's only if you're submitting. If you're not submitting, you can still go and pull from that and use that in a Squid page if you want.
Yeah. So a few examples that we have on there are. Do you get that up, Matt?
I'll stop and let you share.
All right.
Is that good?
Good.
It's someone else's mic is live, so if anyone else wants to.
I got it.
You're the left hand.
Okay. So my Wi-Fi is doing really well here. So yeah, here is the Squid Labs GitHub repository. Got a big old README here, kind of showing just kind of some rules and contribution guidelines and that sort of thing. If you're looking for something specific, like maybe a custom field renderer or things like that, whether you have whether you're looking for something specific or are looking to just simply learn how they work, there are some great examples on here. We've got a few custom field renderers, basically making like masked input, like being able to type just numbers and actually get a time formatted field, or custom checkbox graphics. If you don't want to use the browser's default checkbox, you can replace those with the with a custom field renderer. We have.
Do you have that in a page right now?
I can. So I've got a client call in like 3 minutes.
Oh no! I'm so sorry.
I was going to demonstrate putting it in the
Oh,
page,
no.
but I do
He
not have
always
the
does
time.
this, Jared. He
Oh, my
always
gosh.
does this.
No, no.
Puts us on
It
his
went
mind.
over.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah.
So I'm gonna. It's fairly simple. A lot of the stuff is pretty well pretty obvious. It's just like you put the JS in a snippet, you put the CSS in a CSS resource on the page.
And it's not just JavaScript and custom code. To Rob's point earlier, this is going to be a place where we want to share completely declarative completely declarative Squid pages on standard objects, so that you can go and just pull those into your org. So stay tuned to that. And actually, if someone wants to grab that link and put it in the chat, that is live now. All right, I'm gonna keep us moving. Jared, thank you so much. We made progress. We actually let you talk this time. We'll shift it around. We'll put Squid Labs at the front next time.
Looking forward to 45 seconds next time.
The time turkey apologized to me for squeezing in the product update.
Oh,
and
nice.
product content.
Oh man,
It's the time turkey's fault, not mine.
Oh man,
I'm just allaying any blame here, so we got to squeeze that in.
thank you for all of the puns in there. All right. Okay, so we're coming up on the end here. We're still working on how we're going to post this and publish it, but I wanted to point out that print is this week's red flag. It's that word that when it comes up in your requirements, that should put up the red flags because it means something different to everyone. Last week it was search. Print is one of those things where it could mean a lot of different things. Typically it falls into a couple of categories. It could be a page export, which Squid gives you a couple of options for exporting data from a table, exporting a chart to an image. It could mean a PDF generation or just printing the screen. There are some ways to do that that are lightweight. There are some ways to do that that give you a lot more control, but it also requires some more custom code. And there's some considerations for each one of those. There's a really simple one-line one very, very tiny JavaScript snippet that you can do that just window.print if you have a page that's already formatted with Squid. But then there's also like true document generation, which is where you get into stuff that's really outside Squid's wheelhouse. There's custom code. I've seen some really cool stuff done with AWS Lambda functions. Walter here at Squid did a really awesome thing with that. There's also third-party applications like Conga, Drawloop, and we talked about DocRaptor today, that do a really good job. And so if you don't want to reinvent the wheel with custom code, you should go take advantage of those. And Squid has integrated well with those types of apps in the past. There's a lot of good examples on the community. So just wanted to point that out regarding print. There's a lot of cool things you can do, but it is one of those things that make sure you take the time to do the discovery on the front end. It'll save you some headaches during the actual build. All right, so bringing up the end here, Josh, what's going on with the product content team?
All right, I'm going to blaze through these really quick. First of all, we have an update to our API docs where we now include row merge variables. So if there are rows in context and you want to be able to use merge variables to surface some information about those records, it's really helpful, especially with things like
Zach talked about this last month on the public Nautilus Notes.
Yeah, so
awesome.
Now it's alive.
So,
and Zach actually contributed to this doc. So
cool.
We're having our engineers contribute to the documentation a bit more, especially when it comes to fleshing out our API and making sure that the things that we do support, we communicate that effectively to you so that you are able to use that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Next up is a few product updates. This is in Squid on Salesforce and Squid platform right now. We've in the past we introduced simpler ways to create new pages out of XML, whether uploading it or just pasting it in. Well, we made it a lot simpler for you to actually get that XML by adding in a property into the composer, where you can just download it as XML. And there's docs updated to reflect that. If you're using native mobile on Squid platform, there are a few updates where we incorporated the necessary APIs to access the camera feature of your mobile device, the library of the mobile device, so that you can actually save that image and access other images that are in your mobile device. And there's now an integration for barcodes. So if you if you've built an app where you need to be able to scan in data, that's now a feature that's available. Another area where we're updating our docs on for developers is we have an introduction to how Squid incorporates into your CI/CD process, your continuous integration, continuous delivery, or continuous deployment, depends on the methodology you're using. So if you're an organization that has their own application lifecycle management process, there's some more guidance that we're giving you into how you can incorporate Squid with that. And there's a few other updates to our API documentation, since things like Squid API v2 has a few different things. For example, the
modals.
In V1, we call them pop-ups, but in V2, they're modals. So if you had been writing JavaScript in order to create a new pop-up in your pages, well, that wasn't going to work in V2. So we have updated our docs so that there's now the ability to do that.
So
and
last thing, this evaluate formula fields. Is this V1 and V2?
That one, yeah, that one's for both.
Because that comes up a lot when you have formula fields on models that are quote unquote out of order. If you need a formula field to reflect a change in a model downstream, when you have models that are referencing each other, having this is really helpful. I think it requires just one or two lines of JavaScript, but you can do that as opposed to having to like force a requery and all that stuff. So that's really awesome. Josh, thanks so much. That was a whirlwind. Yeah. All right. So last thing. So Zach is here filling in for Jay. What's coming in the product update?
So pretty soon we're going to be doing the Spark 12.16 maintenance release for Squid on Salesforce. Some of the things that are included in that are awesome are the list component will get DSS support for defining selected state. So if you want to have an item in your list be selected and have a specific style variant for that, that's going to be coming. So that's exciting. Modals, when you're styling modals and being able to set font properties for those. Very nice. V2 tab containers and tab set components will now get the ability to do deep linking with
Very cool.
hash IDs. There's 11 additional bug fixes, which are not mentioned here. I wanted to throw in a quick thing that's been in the works for a while, just to wet your whistle. Style variant conditions are coming very soon in the next Spark 12.2.
Awesome.
That's really, so basically that's conditional styling. Another thing that will only be in V2 is which it makes sense. It's going to be the ability to define your style variants in the CSS, but then conditionally apply them to particular components.
Excellent.
Something that's just recently dropped on or about to drop on Squid platform is support for deploying and retrieving component packs using the Squid CLI. And there's also another thing that goes along with that that's really helpful is a new Squid watch command, which will let you kind of, so let's say you're creating a custom component in your Squid platform site, and you just made a change to one JavaScript file and want to go see, what that looks like. Well, now you have a watch command which will listen for that local change and immediately deploy it to your site, so you can go just immediately see that change show up. So right now component packs are, you'll be able to do that on Squid platform. So that's good for those of you who are using platform. And that wraps up the product update.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. And we're over time. I know there are some questions that we didn't get to, so we'll go back and take a look at those and try to reach out individually if we can. Again, please go on the community. You should have an email in your inbox if you've attended Squid asking for some feedback. We've got a feedback survey. Please go let us know what we can do, what's working, what should change, what should we add. If you've got something that you want to share that's really cool, please let us know. So again, that's a Google form that would have been sent out to you if you've attended Nautilus Notes. So thank you everyone so much for coming. We really appreciate you. We love the Squid community. You are what makes this thing keep moving and keep growing. So thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Have a great day. Woo! All right.